Not long ago, being a Rob main was pretty rough. He's always been a strong zoner, but he's also historically gotten stomped by top tiers. Life's a little different these days. He's still got his flaws, but Ultimate changed some key dynamics that transformed him from a niche zoner into a top tier powerhouse. With Power Shield and unlimited air dodge on the cutting room floor, Rob's best traits were given laser focus. Rob has always been at his strongest when he's either zoning or when he's fighting off stage, and both of those instances have never been more relevant than they are today. Nearly all of this power stems from Rob's kit having some absolutely busted special attacks, but it seems like no one ever talks about it. There's so much going on under the hood here, so let me take the time to show you how to be Rob. Let's start up with Laser. Laser, at a glance, is not the most impressive projectile. And relatively speaking, it has good reach, but many other projectiles outshine it in both damage output and knockback. It's the poster child for chip damage, and if you've seen my zoning guide, you'll already know how powerful that alone can be. But we have not even begun to zero in on Laser's true strength. This is not Laser. This is Laser. If you find yourself anywhere within this range, you are at risk of being hit. This makes Laser an incredibly flexible move, which is something you should get used to hearing when you're talking about Rob's specials. Take a look at what this range looks like when you're actually in game. It is almost impossible for your opponent to be out of Laser range, even while you're recovering from near death. With good aim, Laser can be free damage tacked on in nearly any scenario. But let's elevate this even further still. Laser has a characteristic that makes Rob the anti-zoner in the game, and that is that Laser has piercing. Laser cannot be stopped once it's put into motion. You cannot cling with it, you cannot destroy it, you can't even hide behind another hitbox. Combine this with the range we previously discussed, and you simply cannot out-camp a Rob. He can always position himself outside of another zoner's range while still being able to hit them himself. Here's a few rapid-fire tips to get the most mileage out of Laser possible. 1. Aim for their feet. You don't want to aim down as far as you can, just enough to make the Laser come in low. This gives you a much greater chance of shield poking, but it also guarantees you'll connect the shot against characters with small hurt boxes. 2. Cover jump. Remember, most projectiles in this game are locked to a strictly horizontal pathway. Most opponents have a ton of muscle memory telling them to jump when you shoot at them, and Laser is the perfect answer to that. Even once they catch on, you've now forced them to stay grounded, which places them in an equally dangerous situation. 3. Watch for Laser off stage. Remember, your opponent only gets one air dodge. If you aim a Laser right, you've set up a win-win scenario for yourself. If they air dodge, they've just made themselves that much more vulnerable to the rest of your edge guarding tools, and if they don't, they've just taken a free hit and been pushed into an even less advantageous position. Laser has no business being this good, but you know what's crazy? It's not even the best projectile in Rob's kit.
Hey Bob, I'm looking at what Jack was talking about, and it's definitely not a particle that's nearby. It is a bright object, and it's obviously rotating because it's flashing. It's way out in the distance, apparently rotating in a very rhythmic fashion because the flashes come around almost on time. As we look back at the Earth, it's up at about 11 o'clock, about maybe 10 or 12 Earth diameters. I don't know whether that does you any good, but there's something out there.
Let me introduce you to an old friend of mine called Gyro. There isn't a better projectile in the entire game, and if you'll stick with me, I'll show you why. While the vertical range you can threaten pales in comparison to Laser, Gyro's horizontal range is literally unparalleled. As it charges, it increases the distance and speed which it travels. This makes Gyro very good at targeting specific spots on the stage, making it a very powerful stage control tool. The arcing angle is also very powerful while your opponent is off stage, as down diagonal is not an angle many other characters can safely threaten, and is something that almost every character's recovery needs to go through. We could stop there and Gyro would already be a pretty solid move, but we're barely scratching the surface here. Gyro's properties are not static. It undergoes an important change once it hits the ground. Most projectiles are very low priority, meaning they lose to most any hitbox. Gyro is no exception until it begins to spin. While it's in motion on the ground, its priority gets upgraded. It no longer gets destroyed by hitboxes, but gets knocked away instead. This allows it to trade favorably with much more powerful attacks, beating out attacks as strong as full charge Shadow Ball or Charge Shot. Simply having Gyro on the stage also puts the onus on your opponent to act. They can no longer touch that part of the stage for free, meaning they have two options: respect it and go around, or they can try and take it away from you. Picking up an enemy Gyro is challenging to say the least, but the idea of taking that tool away from Rob is usually too tempting for your opponent to resist. Because of how difficult it is to pick up, most people have learned that dash attack is their safest option. Expect this, and be ready to counter it with a laser to protect what's yours. Here's a little Rob secret for you. Tilts are incredible tools for snatching up items, much less committal than dash attack, and if timed well, you can even pick up a projectile mid-flight with them. But let's get to the real source of Gyro's power, and that's what happens when you pick it up yourself. While Gyro is in hand, you can press down B again to get that exact range we discussed a moment ago, but you also now have access to this. On top of that, holding an item does not restrict your use of special attacks, meaning you still have access to Laser's range as well. Now, be warned, there's a big downside to this. You can't use your neutrals or grab while you're holding Gyro. Except, that's a lie, you can and it's actually really easy to do so. In the air, it's as easy as tapping Z to drop the item right before you attack, which will re-grab the Gyro if you time it right. It's a little bit trickier on the ground, and it's going to require a little bit of data transfer first. If you tap down B to go back into the charge animation and then immediately cancel that into shield, then you're free to go into whatever option you'd like afterwards. It's certainly a few frames slower, but being able to shift so quickly from the set of options you have while holding it to what you can do without will make your intent incredibly difficult for your opponent to read. Now, that's gotta be all the power we can pull from Gyro, right? Almost, but we're not tapped out just yet. Gyro has power even when you aren't directly interacting with it at all. If you've played Smash 4, you're probably already familiar with the kill setups Gyro sets up into, but just fighting near a spinning Gyro can feel like you've got a second character on the screen. This allows for some nasty combos and can even save you from certain death. Even something as innocuous as charging Gyro exerts a ton of pressure. If your opponent has been hit enough times, just showing it to them will be enough to force them into defensive options. It's here where Rob's zoning potential really starts to come into focus. Gyro controls the ground, which forces people into the air. Laser controls the air, which forces people onto the ground. They're both individually very powerful, but the synergy between them creates something greater than the sum of its parts. One last thought for Gyro, and it is a dark prophecy. Gyro is crazy good, but that strength can be turned against you. It's tempting to liberally use Gyro for stage control, but every time you set it up, you need to be planning to retake control of it ASAP. Should the unthinkable happen and your opponent gets their mitts on it, expect one of two things. They'll either huck it at you right away because they don't know what they're doing with it, or they'll throw it into the air and try to keep you away from it. Beware the latter, they're banking on you panicking and rushing in to get it back. Time your attack as the Gyro lands, that way they have to choose between fighting you and picking the Gyro up again. Now, there is a third option as well, and that's where they start weaving the Gyro into their own combos, and if that happens, God help you, because you found one of the rare players who's comfortable using items in their play. Laser and Gyro are an offensive force to be reckoned with, but Rob isn't just good when he's killing you from halfway across the stage. No, Rob has a tool that no other character can touch. Something that lets him go anywhere, anytime, and do whatever he wants while he's getting there. A single option that on its own can overshadow any other character's entire recovery game plan. My friends, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you the best recovery in the game, Robo Burner. Again, let's start off with the basics. Robo Burner has two main methods of use, each one designed to accomplish a different goal. The first is what we use when we're looking for speed and vertical distance, and that's tapping the B button. Every time I see a Rob player recover by holding down the B button, a single tear of oil runs down my cheek, as they are doing nothing but wasting fuel and making themselves more vulnerable. When done right, not even the training room ceiling is high enough to contain this much thrust. And when you can break through that, just imagine what you can do on a standard stage. The second method is what we lean on when we need to cover as much horizontal distance as possible. By using a short burst of fuel and canceling that into a back air, Rob pushes himself up and then slightly forward. Rob gets a total of 7 of these bursts of fuel, but you'll find that 7 is more than enough to cover any gap the game puts in front of you. Now, let's combine the two. You can use the first method for height, then coast back to the stage with the second method. In doing this, you've completely negated most characters' ability to edgeguard you at all. You're also not in any rush to get back to the stage, so if you watch when your opponent comes out to get you and position around that, you can counter their edgeguard while still easily recovering yourself. You can even take a little break under the stage and really think about which of the two ledges you want to recover to. But, as you may have guessed, there's still a lot of fuel left in Robo Burner's tank. We've already looked at the move's strength and recovery, but it also has a lot of value in all states of neutral as well. A lot of characters can get some very scary combos going if they get to you when you've used your double jump, but Rob effectively has 7 more double jumps to try before he's completely screwed. You can also use a bit of fuel to stall your momentum in the air, to evade aerial pressure and then recover safely around it. With Robo Burner added in, you can really start to see how powerful Rob's specials are when they come together. Rob already can hit you from very far away, and now that range can be threatened from anywhere on the map. Here's a quick burst of upbeat tips before I wrap this section up. Don't ever go straight for ledge until you are sure that your opponent is respecting your recovery. I absolutely adore when people come off stage and try to spike Rob, because they just voluntarily put themselves in the most dangerous position possible. Even a small counterattack means life or death for them, while you can spare enough gas to say, you know what, forget this whole exchange, I'm just going to the far ledge instead. Also, save your jump. There's absolutely no downside to recovering with up B alone. This is even more important for when your opponent tries to chase after you, as having that extra burst of speed can completely turn the tables on them. Now, if this was any game other than Smash Ultimate, this would have been the end of the video. Side B was more of a meme than it was a means of actually fighting your opponent. But in Ultimate, Sakurai decided to give us the upgrade to end all upgrades. Overnight, Arm Rotor went from accidental SD to kill you at 60. Arm Rotor is so strong that it's become a trap of sorts for new Rob players. It has a ton of utility, but this comes at a heavy cost. Sure, it covers rolls, completely dominates the ledge, puts out over 20 damage, and kills earlier than Rob's ever dreamt of, but it's the part that comes after that's a lot less exciting. By using Arm Rotor, you're making a declaration to your opponent. You're saying, look, one of us is about to die, and I'm betting it's you. Here's the problem though, a lot of the time it's not your opponent who's in real danger. Smart use of side B requires a deft touch. The best time for side B is when you've taken them off stage. Its high base knockback paired with its very active hitbox and ability to drift while it's in motion makes it one of the best edgeguards in the game. And with Robo Burner as a backup, we can easily get away with throwing such an ambitious option while still making it back to stage. Next best is when your opponent is choosing a ledge option. Positioned correctly, you can cover every choice they have, except no choice at all. Thankfully, because they still have to get back on the stage, they'll usually only get a small punish instead of picking up a free kill on you. One quick note about side B. It does reflect, but I strongly advise that you forget that you just heard that at all. The frames that reflect are really awkward to time, as it starts late and ends well before the attack does. You'll find that you can stumble onto reflects at times, but it should rarely be your sole intention. Ironically, Rotor is a very powerful counter to other reflects. While you're holding Gyro, people assume that your next attack will have to be a projectile, and for any other button, they'd be correct. Just not this one. Smash, more than anything else, is a game about positioning. The best thing about Rob is that you're always already in position to fight back. It doesn't matter if you're on the stage or off, an advantage or disadvantage, you always have something you can lean on to make the situation work. And it's this flexibility that gives Rob his real power. Set up right, Rob can zero death characters with the gyro loop, or fly into positions he never was able to before with burner boosting. And it's kinda strange that I'm not mentioning those till just now, huh? Well, there's a reason for that. At any level under complete mastery of those techs, all you're doing is throwing away all the advantage everything else we've talked about has given you. They're both flashy and deadly in very specific instances, but most of the time, and I would argue practically all of the time, you're better off just pushing the B button from far away. No matter where you are, you're able to hit them long before they could ever hit you. So why would you take that advantage away and go fight them on their terms? The point isn't to run away the whole time, but rather to keep the deck stacked permanently in your favor. Playing this way is going to upset people, because it truly isn't fair. Rob has the power to control the pace of the game in a way no other character can. If you're making gameplay decisions based on anything other than what's going to make you win, you're doing it wrong. They don't put a gold star on the bracket if you do something flashy, and they don't dock you any points for how lame you played. So do us both a favor and actually use this strength. And that, my friends, is how to be Rob.